Hello learners and curious minds, welcome back to UNYP Education with me, Raffaele. Today we're diving deeper into the realm of ANOVA, focusing specifically on one-way within-subjects ANOVA, a statistical method crucial in advancing research within psychology as well as other scientific fields. But again, if you've missed the other videos, what is an ANOVA? So ANOVA, or analysis of variance, is our statistical friend helping us to compare means across different groups to unearth patterns and relationships in our data. It is a pivotal test for interpreting multifaceted scenarios where multiple variables come into play. So you might recall our early discussion on one-way between subjects ANOVA. The difference here is, within subjects ANOVA, as the name implies, is utilized when the same subjects are used in all treatment conditions, like, for instance, evaluating the impact of a psychotherapeutic program aimed at reducing alcohol consumption over different time points. This can also be called ANOVA for related scores, but usually, if you will see, within subjects ANOVA is something that majority of researchers and statisticians will understand. But based on the example I gave you before, and if you missed the previous video, if not, you find it up here, why not just use a within subjects t-test instead of doing some new scary test? Well, while a t-test allows for comparison between two related groups, within subjects ANOVA permits comparison across three or more related groups, offering thus a more comprehensive view of our data landscape. So, if you remember, in our previous videos, all of them, basically, we've discussed the assumption of normality at length. Here is another assumption as well. However, our software Jamovi considers ANOVA a very robust test, and this is why, honestly, does not even give us the option to have normality tested here. If you really want to do it, you can go in exploration, descriptives, and you will find here your Shapiro-Wilk normality. However, for the purpose of these videos, we will not do it, and I'm pretty sure you know enough about how to conduce normality. Another key assumption, and this is a new one for within subjects ANOVA, is sphericity, checked using the Mauchly's test of sphericity. This test assesses whether the variances of the differences between all possible pairs of within subjects conditions are equal. Don't worry too much about what it means. Consider this as the same as Levine, as Shapiro-Wilk, meaning it is violated if it's below 0.05 and it is respected if it is above 0.05. If this assumption is violated, we apply what is called the Greenhouse-Geiser correction to accurately interpret our results. Well, I wish we could apply this correction even to our ozone right now, but alas, we cannot. The effect size for all ANOVAs are mostly the same. Even in this case, as in one way between subjects, we have eta squared. And it still is crucial, in as much as it tells us the proportion of variance in our dependent variable that can be attributed to our independent variable. Post-Hoc tests? Yes, even for one-way within subjects, we have post-hoc tests. In comparison to one-way, we're not using QK or Games-Howell here, but given the multiple comparisons inherent in within subjects ANOVA, in as much as participants are compared within groups at multiple time points, Bonferroni's correction here is essential, because it reduces type 1 errors, which could occur when using other post-hoc tests, such as QK or Games-Howell, and it will adjust the significance level. Now, this is a personal choice. I honestly like to use Bonferroni also in one way between subjects ANOVA, and other statisticians would agree with me. However, you can use QK and Games-Howell if your instruction requires you to do so in one way between subjects, but in one way within subjects, it's absolutely essential that you will use Bonferroni, because it's the best test to check these multiple comparisons. So, as usual, we have a practical example, as you can see in the datasets. So imagine you are researching the effectiveness of a psychotherapeutic program on reducing alcohol consumption at different intervals. At first, 6 months, and 1 year after the start of the program. We can use, of course, a within-subjects ANOVA to analyze the variation in alcohol consumption. This can be done in each singular stage. For the same subjects, as you can see, we have the same subjects on each row at 3 intervals in time. If it will be 2, it will be a within-subjects t-test. If it will be 4 or 100, it will still be a within-subjects ANOVA. Now, let us go with a hands-on practice experience on how to do this in Janovi. So, as usual, we will go into ANOVA, and among these options over here, this time we go into repeated measures ANOVA, in as much as within subjects is analyzing, well, repeated measures indeed, at initial, at a 6 months period, and after a year period. So let us click here. We have a very different log compared to before. So here we have these repeated measure factors, which is mostly aesthetic. You can leave it in level 1, level 2, level 3, level 100, and repeated measure factor 1, or you can just call it different ways. So for instance, we call this psychotherapeutic intervention. We call this initial. We call this 6 months, and we call it 1 year. Now, you can just simply drag, or you can use the arrows here, tuck, and tuck. After this, we will click on the effect size. In our case, we click on eta squared. Then model, we can leave it like this for this exact test. And assumption checks. We will check for sphericity, and let us see how is the sphericity. Well, you can answer yourself, so I will give you a few seconds. And as I'm sure majority of you got, and if you didn't, it's completely fine, the assumption of sphericity was violated in this case in as much as the p is less than 0.05. So in this case, we would click on greenhouse geyser, which, as you can see, gives us a small correction over here. I would personally remove the none in as much as it could confuse you, and you would, for instance, report the degrees of freedom here instead of this one, or like this 2 instead of this and this. So I would personally remove it, but if you prefer, for completeness, you can of course keep it. Then, post-hoc tests, we put psychotherapeutic interventions over here. We don't want UK, we want Bonferroni. And finally, estimated marginal means, we will just put them here just to have a look. And I will go with tables, since they're usually easier to read, even if definitely uglier than graphs. So, we have a lot of tables right now, so let's go through steps. First of all, we already had the assumptions, we went over it. Sphericity was violated, and hence we just reported minus V or W, and we will report the P being violated less than 0.05, and hence we say that we apply a greenhouse geyser correction. So we will look at the within subjects effects in as much as we do not have between subjects effect. We will return on that later in another video. So in the within subjects effect, we have first of all our P, our significance, and in this case we have a significant result, meaning that our psychotherapeutic intervention has indeed engendered some change in the levels of alcohol consumptions of our patients. We still don't know yet how is it going the direction, if it's maybe more, maybe they were just depressed after our intervention and decided to drink more. And we have an eta square of 0.110, which is not very strong, but for the purpose of these videos is absolutely fine. Then, since we have significance, we're going to post-hoc. Because if we don't have significance, we would not have the post-hoc. Because, as our teacher always loved to say, it's like decorating a burnt cake. So, no, we don't want to do that. It's a waste. So, in this case, we'd go to post-hoc. Again, Bonferroni. As you can see, you have here the P with Bonferroni. So John will remind you which one you picked. So in this post-hoc, we can see each of the comparisons within our dataset. So we have initial and 6 months, initial and 1 year, and 6 months and 1 year. The difference between all these timestamps. We see that the difference between initial alcohol consumption and alcohol consumption 6 months after our training, the difference is indeed significant because Bonferroni is less than 0.001. And same can be said for the difference between initial alcohol level and alcohol levels after 1 year. However, we have no significance in the time span of 6 months and 1 year. So we have the mean difference over here. Now, you see a mean difference of 11 points, and you'll be like, well, what does that mean? Well, if you want to cheat and you want it easier, you can just go here into the means and just see how it looks like. Otherwise, it's pretty simple. You can take this dash as a minus sign. So you will have initial alcohol consumption minus the alcohol assumptions after 6 months. You see that it's 11. You know that there would be like, a positive difference, meaning that this one is higher than this one. Here after 6 months and 1 year, in fact, you see that you have like a minus, meaning that this one is actually lower than this one. Well, I wonder about our program then. And as you can see here in the marginal means, we have exactly these findings. We have the initial one was 46.8, 6 months was 35.7, and 1 year was actually more than 6 months because it was 36.3. Now, what does this could say about our intervention, our psychotherapeutic methods? Well, they could say that basically 6 months is enough to give a significant change into our patient's life. If we can say if their sample is representative to our population. However, if we go more than 6 months, patients can get, bored about it, or they would just get frustrated with it, and hence they could start drinking. Or at the same time, we can say that, with time there are enhanced risks for falling again into drinking, and so on and so forth. However, these are just speculations because this difference is not significant. So it could just be, random. Maybe that day they felt like, they didn't want to put the questionnaire, so they just they want to deal with the questionnaires, and hence they just just made it however they wanted. And this was more or less all that you needed to know about repeated measures ANOVA, within subjects ANOVA, or one-way between subjects, within subjects ANOVA, for related scores. You can call it however you want. And why do you think it was easier this time? Well, because you already are experts in ANOVAs. After one-way between subjects ANOVAs, which is the hardest to understand because it's your first encounter with ANOVA, the rest are going to be more or less a walk in the park. Aside from maybe one small exception, but I will not spoil you that one. And all right, wonderful people, that brings us to the end of today's enlightening episode on one-way within subjects ANOVA. I sincerely hope that the insights and nuances shared today act as a catalyst in your journey through psychological research and statistical knowledge. Let's wrap up by revisiting some instances where within subjects ANOVA can be a game changer in psychological research. This technique is especially beneficial when studying the impact of interventions or treatments over time, as we saw. Of course, over on the same group of participants, right? Allowing us to discern patterns and variation with greater accuracy. Considering psychological studies focusing on behavioral modifications, cognitive developments, or the effectiveness of therapeutic interventions, like those assessing the varying impacts of cognitive behavioral therapy sessions on individuals suffering from anxiety disorders. Through within subjects ANOVA, we can meticulously examine the effectiveness of each session and make informed conclusions about the therapy's overall impact. Another practical application could be in educational psychology, for instance, where we might assess the learning outcomes of students over different teaching methods and time periods, enabling a richer, more nuanced understanding of the learning process. And remember, guys, statistics is not just about numbers and computations. It's about unraveling the stories hidden within the data, allowing us thus to make meaningful contributions to the field of psychology and improve lives as well. Why not? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to UNYP Education for more explorations into this fascinating world of psychology and statistics. I'm Raffaele, your host, reminding you that the pursuit of knowledge is a rewarding journey filled with discoveries and insights. Until our next scholarly adventure, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep exploring the hidden tales within the data.